once we've got through to DPI dispensations, we deal with grant applications so they can leave. And you're very welcome to stay.
Not to be rude, but no
And then we'll carry on with minutes and all that sort of thing, and then we'll do the climate emergency, which also means that Sarah can go.
Oh, thank you.
But that's first on the agenda anyway. So, welcome everybody. There will be an open session for public question time. In the case of Sarah, it makes more sense for her to speak when we get to that on the agenda, I think, than to talk before we get to it. We are, people can record, we will be recording for our page, but does anybody else wish to record the meeting? No. We've had 2 apologies for absence that I'm aware of, where we had the reasons this afternoon. Are we happy with the reasons we were given for those 2 apologies? Yes. Do we have any personal or undisclosable pecuniary interests in Mary?
Yes, item 222395 Welfare Market.
Right.
Which was the directory board.
Right. Have we new DPI written requests? No. We'll come back to the public session. So, Fair and Funky, would you like to talk to us about your grant application?
So we submitted our grant application quite a few months ago now. I think we've been past about quite a few times, so I just thought it would be best for me to come and explain, because Fair and Funky often fall into the gaps when it comes to funding, because we're not a charity, we're a community interest company, but it means that a lot of funding we can't apply for. We're currently looking to replace our smoothie bike. So we have a smoothie bike that we use for school workshops, which is the core of our work. We're based in primary schools and run workshops about fair trade recycling and the environment. The core of what we do is centred around empowering people to take their own little steps to change the world, so putting the action into the hands of the people. This smoothie bike ticks a lot of boxes for us in terms of empowerment and fair trade recycling the environment. We talk about food waste, recycling, healthy living, healthy lifestyles, renewable energy, sustainability, fair trade ingredients, locally sourced ingredients, everything like that. So it's a really good tool for us to start those sustainability conversations with children. On top of that, we do a lot of work with community organisations and festivals, so Home for Food and Drink Festival, Home for Arts Festival, etc. And the smooth bike is used quite frequently across the board in all of those community events. The current smoothie bike that we've got, unfortunately, has been pedalled by a lot of humans, and although we have repaired it quite a few times, it's getting to a point now where bits of it are dropping off that possibly need welding back on, and we just don't possess that power. So we're looking to get money for a new smoothie bike.
And you sent us a letter about the different people you reach across the valley, which was very interesting. Does anybody want to ask any questions, raise any points?
Just off the back of that, I know that we had an email conversation about the possibility of putting branding onto the bike, so depending on what logo dimensions you have, that might be feasible as well to put the parish council logo onto the frame of the bike.
I
But
think
if
you
that's-
also said if you couldn't, you could put it on your publicity.
Yeah, we'd
which
all,
would be-
yeah, every time we share something about the bike, we'll say that it's funded by the parish council.
Well, we could talk about that sort of detail.
Yeah, of course.
Anybody have any issues to raise, questions to raise? We usually say we'll get into my show. What shall we go to then? Mary.
Sorry, just, I mean, does it need replacing now, or ideally,
yes, we
Can
definitely
you make it out for a little longer, or does it absolutely, is a need now? Really?
we get into a point where the blender on the front doesn't really work very well.
It's a bit fundamental.
Yeah, and we've obviously we don't want to waste anything, and we've tried to push it for as long as it will go. But yeah, like it doesn't work. If we're doing outdoor events, we've stopped doing outdoor events with it now because it doesn't work in the rain anymore because of how
I think we believe you need it now.
yeah.
It's urgent.
Does the committee want to discuss to vote on this in private, or shall we vote now? We'll vote now. All those in favour of giving this 900 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, 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 very much. I'm very grateful. If you don't mind, I need to go to Scouts, so I'm going to make my excuses and leave now, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, back to the agenda. We've done apologies. And hang on. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong page. Right. Items to be discussed in private. The outside building stuff probably should be in private still until that's kind of sorted. I've talked to Jen and Rich, the staffing stuff is general and seems like sort of stuff the public should know, as opposed to individual people's remuneration and what have you.
Yeah.
So is there anything anybody else wants to discuss, think should be put in private?
No.
Okay. To confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. I had a question on the minutes of the previous meeting, which I marked, and I've lost. There was a chart with, yes, item 2, the people who have access to Unity Trust. It's probably a typing error, but it says there's Deputy Clerk, Chair of Climate Emergency, and then
Yeah, that's already been.
should that be finance? It's already been
Yeah.
done, right. Okay. Right, the Climate Emergency Standing Committee referral. You've all had time to read this. We've also received Sarah's alternative proposal, and today we got one from Andy. We got communication from Andy as well. So, shall we start? I think we'll start with Rachel's, then we'll do yours. Perhaps we should hear you both in full and then have the discussion. That might be easier if that's okay with you two. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, my paper, I'm not going to read out the whole paper, it's quite long. But the principle really is, well, there's two things. There's considering our resources and staffing load, if you like. I'm conscious that there's two things going on. There's the more committees we have, the more money and time we spend in administration. So it's in all our interests to make sure that all those committees are as effective and as efficient as possible. And I'm conscious that we currently also have a clerk and a deputy clerk, and then we have a dedicated climate emergency coordinator, which was the right thing to do when the climate emergency committee started. But now that the sort of building networks and developing the website and building partnerships phase of the climate emergency role in pushing forward, or the coordinated role in pushing forward the climate emergency action plan, I feel that actually a lot of what we're doing is more about influencing, communicating and trying to engage with the wider people in the valley. It's, you know, otherwise we're just talking to the same people who are very keen on progressing climate emergency measures. So actually I think the role of the Climate Emergency Committee is more about enthusing, inspiring and facilitating the inaction of projects to address the climate emergency on a local basis, and that fits very neatly with elements of what the current Publications and Communications Committee does, which is all about communicating with the valley, about how to make us, you know, the community a better place, the valley a better place, and obviously a key part of that at the moment is addressing the climate emergency. So I felt that the third staff member, if you like, of the Clerk team, it made sense for them to have a more flexible role that wasn't just dedicated to a specific committee. So that's sort of one side of it. Then the other side of it is that actually the reality of the Climate Emergency Committee is that it started as a result of public coming to us and saying they wanted to declare a climate emergency. And actually we have, I think it's a little bit kind of siloed to just say, right, that was the responsibility of the Climate Emergency Committee, so all the things, projects it gets involved in. Because actually in practice, addressing the climate emergency should flow through all the council's activities, and it does to some extent in terms of the elements of the neighbourhood plan, about sustainability, renewable energy, etc. Our grant giving takes quite seriously the importance of, you know, renewable. I know we've given grants to support making community assets more efficient, all those different things. So I feel that actually the principle of being greener, if you like, is being embedded in other parts of the council. So I'm not convinced that we need a separate committee, and I think there's an opportunity to bring the two together. And actually, when we then communicate with the public, it's about telling them what we do as a parish council, and also supporting the community in terms of taking climate action. Because the reality is that the Climate Emergency Committee, we have lots of people who come forward, lots of ideas, but in practice those ideas only turn into tangible projects if people do an awful lot of legwork to make them happen. And the best will in the world, that relies on dedication of volunteers of councillors, and there are dwindling numbers of councillors committing to these committees, and actually Publications and Communication and Climate Emergency are pretty low numbers. And similarly, members of the community, we only meet every 3 or 4 times a year. So, to be honest, members of the community, we're better facilitating them taking smaller action through all the other local groups that are going on. So I'm trying to kind of pull together two things. One is making the parish council in its entirety more efficient, and the other part of that is making sure that we're also more effective by actually making sure the committees that meet really progress change and actually are able to do things in the way they have as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think there's an issue around the name. I know in this original paper I called it the Communications and Climate Emergency Committee. It could be called something different, which makes sure the emphasis is still on climate action, and I'm quite happy for that to change. I think there's also a question about how frequently it would meet. We're combining two committees that both meet 4 times a year, and that's potentially 8 meetings. I don't think a committee needs 8 meetings, but it could have 6, for example, in which case actually you've reduced the administrative burden of those meetings, but you're actually meeting on a more regular basis, so arguably the committee is more effective. So I'm just keen to progress this idea, and I know that the Climate Emergency Committee itself was split, basically. People who thought that we should be pragmatic, which is what I think this proposal is, in merging it with Publications and Communications, and those who felt that it was important that we had a standalone climate committee.
Thank you. So, Councillor Sheard.
Yes.
Member of the public, Sheard.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, I just very much think that we've just had COP27, and that has not, Ed Miliband on PM Today has just said that many leaders are just fiddling while the world burns. And I do think about the younger generation we may not be here in 10 years' time, but the younger generation of this valley will not be thankful if we sort of change the name to climate action. I think it's important to keep the name climate emergency because a climate emergency has been declared, and there's 37% of all parish and town councils that have a climate emergency. I agree, you know, we are struggling for members, but believe me, we've got literally 10 years to address the situation, and the issues are going to escalate. So I do think that we ought to include all the 5 town and parish councils that surround Kirklees, because I think we could be way more effective in actually putting pressure on Kirklees Council to do really effective things. You know, for instance, a big issue is the lorries that come through our communities. If we all acted collectively, all the parish and town councils, and campaigned to Kirklees and said we can't carry on like this. You know, the traffic would be significantly reduced if we could, you know, pitch an idea to the council that, you know, lorries come in at certain times in the mornings and in the evenings at certain times. There's other collective actions like the banning of glyphosate that has terrible effects on biodiversity in nature, which is carried on being used. And this actually would take collective action from all 5 parish and town councils. And if we had a paid facilitator to work on this who could liaise with Kirklees Council, I very much see the emergency much more as a sort of pressure group of saying, you know, this is the first tier of our political system, and lots of people are so disengaged with politics because nothing really happens. There's a lot of tokenistic things happen, and I agree it is hard, and I totally respect what Rachel's saying, but I think the young people that filled this room, I've never seen so many people totally, you know, the younger generation really engaged with politics, and I think that is a good credit to the Home Valley Parish Council. It actually put them on the map. So really I'm speaking for the younger generation. Thank you.
Well, you didn't continue because you're proposing instead that it merge, that
That
Pubs and Commons merge with service provision.
Yeah, so that was stated on the written
Yeah.
piece that I've given you.
Sean, Councillor East, can service provision cope with the business of pubs and commons as well?
So it needs to be twice a year, does it? Pubs and commons,
No,
3
it's
times?
4 times.
4 times a year. Okay.
If the answer's no,
It's difficult to say because I don't really know what the workload of pubs and commons is like. Not having been on pubs and commons. I mean, obviously it's a committee that's had a previous merger, hasn't it? With there was service provision, and then there was the other committee that I forgot the name of. CASC, that's it, yeah. Community assets. I don't know, is the answer.
you don't know. I mean, I have to say it bothers me that pubs and commons just gets kicked around and let's shove it in a corner because it doesn't matter. It's one of the most important committees we have, and essential to the continuance of the growth of the influence of us as a council and the respect we're held with and the awareness people have of what we achieve. So it makes me a bit unhappy that we just shove it in some other corner.
That's not sorry, Jeff. I'm not trying to suggest that pubs and commons is just shoehorned
No.
in. I think there's a lot of alignment with what communication we do through website media, through Facebook posts, through awards, for example. There's a lot of that is the same messages or enhanced messages which are about climate and community for me. And I think there's a lot of dovetailing that can be done that I'm not quite sure fits so well. So.
I suspect the workload of CASC might be a bit too big to I mean, 4 more meetings a year is a lot. How many do you have now? 4?
Mm.
Yeah, so it'd be
But
8.
would it be necessarily 4 more meetings? I don't know.
Well, I'm proposing it could potentially be, rather than the 4 meetings of community, climate emergency committee and 4 meetings of pubs and commons, you could potentially
Combined.
have combined and the 6.
No, that's a different argument. I'm asking
Oh, I see,
Siobhan
sorry.
about
Okay.
Sarah's suggestion. It would be 8. If we took Sarah's suggestion just as it is without amending it in any way, now we might decide to reduce pubs and commons to 3 instead of 4, though I think that's risky, but you'd be talking of at least 3 more meetings a year.
I don't know. Would it necessarily be that? Couldn't you just tack on pubs and cons onto existing plans for
Well,
service
what
provision
time-
meetings?
what
But
time-
obviously that might mean a more frequent service provision committee meeting rather than 4. Maybe it might be 6, but it's a
But what time do you currently finish usually?
But it really depends. Sometimes it's beyond 9 o'clock. I think last time it was about 9:30. So
So you can't just tack it on the end, can you?
well, that's that on that situation. It lasted longer, you know. But what I'm saying is rather than necessarily have a separate meeting, just tack it onto the end of another committee meeting, and I guess if you're having, for example, 6 service provision meetings rather than 4, then perhaps that will take that.
Yes.
That will mean that
Yeah.
each one of those 6 will be shorter.
They'll all be shorter, yeah. Okay, Doug's and Mary.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think we need to speak about this quite frankly, really, and look at next year, because whatever we decide to do now is effectively setting budgets and committees and structures, and even if these proposals go through, officers that are in place for beyond the next May election. And if I'm honest, having served on pubs and commons, and looking at what their duties are on the paper that was with the minutes, apart from really the key discussions that are held about tidy trade and community champions, a lot of the other stuff just happens anyway. It happened with the Queen anyway, because it goes directly through the chair and the vice chair of the council. And also, Rich, as deputy clerk's doing an amazing job of pushing comms out anyway through Facebook. If you only meet once every four times a year, that committee's not agile enough to respond to anything. So we've currently got 4 committees, most of which meet 4 times a year, most of which have very long agendas because they don't meet infrequently, and it's just not sustainable.
Got 5 committees.
5 committees, yeah, plus staffing. But I don't think that the fact that service provision and doesn't meet regularly enough for the business it's got, pubs and coms I don't think has really got enough of a function to justify having 4 committee meetings a year. I think you could look to do that differently. But my big concern about this proposal is, and it's borne out by what Andy's put in his email and what's been acknowledged by both Rachel and Sarah, it's sort of lost its head of steam. There may well have been young people turn up for that meeting. Where are they now? The volunteers have walked away. We've got no chance of a collaboration or anything of any significance with the authority at the moment because they're just basically going to be cutting everything back. And if people want to do things like the pressure groups and the other thing, they need to do that outside of a formal organisation like the parish. I do think the idea of collaborating with other parish and town councils is a nice idea, but that would take at least a year, if not 2 years, to get over the line because the other councils are as slow as us as making decisions. So I actually think we should partly think we should disband both committees and put that energy and that time into increasing the amount of time the other committees meet and build it into their agendas. And I think it's a huge amount of officer time to create the agendas and all the processes to service another set of committees. And next year we may not even have enough council. We're struggling to not even how many people are not here tonight. The way that we're going and the way it's going to be after May, I think the prospect of servicing all those committees and getting volunteers is really remote, if I'm honest.
Well, we have no idea what it'll be about. I mean, we could have 23 new councillors after
We could.
this, all of them eager and member of every committee.
Good.
Let's hope so.
Mayor, Councillor Blacker.
Yeah, I think the proposal to merge climate emergency and pubs and coms that does have some kind of rationale, because those are the two outwardly facing committees really, seeking to influence what happens out there in the community. And I also like the point that Rachel made about the fact that the climate emergency action plan, it is not just the responsibility of that particular committee. That's analogous to the neighbourhood plan. It actually affects the whole of the council. And I think we need to do some work on what is the vision, what is the mission of the council, and maybe we might decide that the climate emergency is going to be the prime focus really of the council. So I think some work needs to be done first, and I'm with Doug's in thinking that if we make a decision now, it's going to bind the successor council. And I also like the idea that Sarah's idea about working with the parish councils. And I think that is something that we need to be doing in the future. So I think just good ideas, but maybe now is not quite the time to make the decision.
I mean, I want to ask Sarah a question. Do you know these other parish councils? Have you talked to anybody whether they're interested in getting together?
Well, I've worked with Alison Morgan, with Claire Waters on Kirkburton Parish Council, and we were going to go around all the parish councils trying to get a ban on the contract of glyphosate.
Do you think we'd be able to persuade them where each of us pays a fifth of the salary, for instance?
What? Sorry, say that again.
Well, if you want us to work together collectively as a group of councils,
yeah,
could each of the councils pay a fifth of this person's salary?
that sounds a really good idea, Pat. Yeah.
Councillor Rees.
Are there still co-opted committee members on the Climate Emergency Committee?
We've just had 2 new the news agents.
They're a public membership.
Oh right, yeah. No, there's sadly quite a lot of people for various reasons. Maybe partners being ill or one of the people moving away. It is very thin on the ground, but I have worked for Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace to try and get climate emergency on the political level, because that was the intention, to campaign for that. Sadly, at the Kirklees Council, it's just a paper exercise, because I appreciate they've got a very stretched budget. We live in very, very difficult times financially, but we will be losing billions upon billions if we don't address this issue.
Right. Officially, we've got 1 minute left for this discussion, so I would ask speakers to be brief. Councillor Hobley.
I just want to speak. I don't know we should just kick the can down the road and go, oh, that's a problem for the next council, because frankly, the next council arrive, they're not going to want to rearrange committees, and anyway, in practice, they won't be able to until the following year. I think it's our responsibility to set up what we think would work in conjunction with the clerk and deputy clerk in terms of their staffing expectations of the third member of staff, if you like. And I would welcome if the clerk and deputy clerk could permit them to share their views on it. My proposal is trying to find a pragmatic solution to making committees as effective as they can be. We don't know, as you say, Chair, we may have 23 very keen and eager councillors. I hope we don't have the situation that Councillor Carey implied, because that would be pretty shameful. And one of the things that the Publications and Communications Committee is doing is making sure that a communique goes out to every house in the household in the valley, to encourage people to stand, and why it's so important that people stand for the parish council. And actually, in my nearly 8 years on the council, I've seen us become a lot more involved in the community. There's more things visible, and actually more people know about what the parish council is, in part because of the communications we do. But the reality is, with the climate emergency thing, I'm not taking away from any of the clear, dedication and passion that Councillor Shears has and others have. The reality is we don't have many levers to pull as parish council, and the one we do have is the ability to communicate with our local community. And my view is our biggest impact is by making lots of people do a little thing, rather than big chunky projects.
I would lob in before we ask Jen or Rich or both of them to speak that I am still concerned that this new member of staff needs to be able to take on planning. And if we're giving them both pubs and commons and climate emergency, we're still left needing somebody else to do planning. Anyway, on that happy note, Jen or Rich, do you have?
Well, it's probably best if Jen's starts, she's got a comment about that.
I suppose there are several drivers really to be aware of is context to this particular item. There is a need to propose a budget to full council which accurately reflects staffing costs anticipated for 2023 to 24 onwards. And part of that then looks into the changes that have been under consideration for the clerking team and certainly discussed at staffing meetings. And those changes need to address my own personal wish to return to 25 hours per week from April 2023, rationalising the workload of both myself and Rich, and then also addressing the fact that we've got this as a temporary role as well. So the possible avenues the council can look at is expanding the team and changing roles within the team, and reducing the committees. A further element to this is we are struggling regularly now to ensure that some meetings are quorate. So that's something else to throw into the mix there. And we do need to address this temporary post, because legally we shouldn't just be, you shouldn't as a council just be extending contracts on a yearly basis. You know, that's not right to be doing that. So that's the sort of wider context to it. And of course how this is going to end up coming here to finance and management is we've got to recommend that budget to council, and that's got to address the staff costs, and they're linked to the committee structure. So, that's, I wouldn't want to, I'm not going to advise what you should do in terms of this, but those are the things that must be addressed, in my view, as clerk.
Can I make a comment on committee structure? So, because effectively, we could just stay with the status quo, in which case we have obviously, then we have a staffing budget issue because we've got a climate emergency coordinator who supports it. But it's worth just reminding everybody that the climate emergency coordinator does not do any of the administration associated with the meeting or the minutes. So all those climate emergency committees take up as much clerk time as all the other committees. In terms of preparation, I'm not saying necessarily in terms of the actions that come out of it, but so what the proposal of combining two committees should do is lessen that administrative burden, and therefore that should cause some lessening. And actually that was recommended by our audit report we had a few years ago about reducing the number of committees. And obviously I've put in the picture the fact that that new combined committee could meet more frequently than just 4 times a year. It wouldn't necessarily have to do that if there wasn't the capacity with which to do that. But I personally think then that third, how then the clerk team distribute the staffing within those 3 teams is up to their own specialisms and interests and expertise. So I'm not saying that the third member of staff necessarily needs to support that pros and cons climate.
We're saying
it's
we'll
not
have a third
dedicated.
person and we'll work out what they do, and these are the committees we'll have.
Yeah, because effectively the work that the climate emergency coordinator has done to date and will have done by the time that she departs, because very much she's employed, she's committed down to August. Will have created things like a database of information of community groups, organisations, businesses, etc. that we can communicate with, which isn't just about climate emergency, that's about us as the parish council being able to talk to people and communicate with them effectively. So that's something that will have been completed by the current post holder, but actually will then become a resource of the clerk team.
Did you have your hand up, Mary?
I did, but I think Joseph's probably
Well,
first.
let's
Can we be brief, because we're running
Some
out of time?
clarification questions. So, the existing person who does the work, they're contracted till August anyway.
Yeah, they're on a year contract, but you could terminate it.
So it could be terminated, but so in theory, the new council in May onwards could review that and could decide to bring that in-house. Well, the thing I wanted to check really, are you saying that this new officer role, you basically delete the coordinator role, you'd have another effectively clerk employee whose focus would be around this type of area of work?
Not necessarily. We would have another assistant clerk, deputy clerk, call it what you will. And we would then have to decide what their responsibilities are, because we have the issue of the planning committee to deal
But
with.
they could clerk the meeting and track the papers.
They could
They
clerk the
take
meeting,
that,
yes.
You go from 3 staff to 3 staff.
Councillor Black,
You wouldn't do that,
sorry.
so-
I was just
yeah.
I'm just going to ask, is it possible to, because there are two issues here, one is the combined council, the other one is, committees, the other one is the point is creating another post. Is it possible to uncouple those? Do they have to be dealt with together? Could we uncouple that and perhaps vote tonight to start a new, to change the staffing complement structure?
Well, if we combine these two, I didn't realise, Rachel, till you just said it, that the Climate Emergency Committee doesn't do any clerking.
No,
That
the
we are-
coordinator doesn't do the clerk. No.
So if we combine those two in the short term, regardless of the discussion about an additional clerk, it wouldn't make any difference to the clerk and deputy clerk's work. Or reduce it, in
So
fact.
reduce it. Because they're clerking fewer meetings.
Can I just say, you've got 6 committee meetings, planning, the climate emergency, housing commons, service provision, finance and management, staffing, and then council meetings. And at the moment, I'm 3 sets of minutes behind.
I mean, if we merge these committees, they're going to have to meet together. It's going to have to be one committee, not double the meetings. I mean, calling them one committee but doubling the meetings isn't altering a thing. It's
Yeah, but I'm not suggesting doubling the meetings, that's definitely not. I'm just suggesting that there needs to be then a review as to whether it was just, I mean, we could start with just, it'll be 4 meetings and then combine the 2 committees. Obviously a new terms of reference would need to be developed to cover the contents of that committee, but it would be loosely what's...
I mean, and we could also bear in mind what Councillor Curry said about every single committee perhaps should have a 15-minute pubs and comms section on the end of its meeting agenda anyway. What are we going to do about public? I mean, at FNM we always say Rich will carry on doing a brilliant job with the publicity. Maybe we need to actually address it a bit more. Who are we trying? Who needs to know about which bit of what we've just discussed, and how would we like them to find out?
Well, one other remaining thing, because we used to review the content that went into the Home Value Review meeting, we don't do that anymore. So the main thing that seems to be left is the Community Champions and Tidy Trader. That could be a one-off meeting of councillors just to volunteer to be on a working group. And just have it as a separate meeting. We decide, people submit papers. I think that could be taken off that agenda, which, and as you said, if you bolt on the pubs and comms at the end of every committee, which we do anyway now, you could just delete that committee, but leave the climate change committee there, but knowing that we're going to review it in the light of the officer coming to an end. And then you could, if you are going to create an extra post, then that could be used to cover both that committee and planning, couldn't it?
But we have to set the budget for next year, so we need to know what structure we're setting the budget for.
Somebody needs to make a proposal about what we do about this, and we need to get a move on.
Well, can I put forward a proposal which is based on what I originally said, which is that the climate emergency and publications and communications committees are proposed to be merged with a new terms of reference developed between the 2 committees, with a view to having a minimum of 4 meetings a year, and the 2 individual committees are thereby disbanded. So I suppose that's one proposal.
Right. Shall we vote on that? Is that the simple? Then we can vote on or has anybody got any amendments or anything they want to add to that?
My amendment, I suppose, would be just to delete Pubs and Comms Committee.
Say again.
Just to delete Pubs and Communications Committee.
To delete it altogether.
Yeah, I do think, as Sarah said, it's a bit disingenuous. They're both very different things for very different purposes, really. And they don't feel as if they sit very comfortably together. I am, as I said, concerned about the future of this work stream anyway, because if it's not, if we don't get elected councillors to lead it.
Your proposal, so we've got two proposals. We need to decide whether it's an amendment, what we want to vote on here. We've got one proposal to merge them. We've got one proposal to essentially disband Pubs and Comms and look at how we, as a whole council, deal with Pubs and Comms. Does somebody want to put together a proposal, a suggestion, an objection?
Well, Chair, I'm not sure we can really propose just a disbanded committee without having its view of what it currently looks after is going to go.
So maybe the answer is to merge. And we'll vote on this, Sarah. I'm not ignoring what you've said, but you're not putting up an alternative. I mean, we know what your objections are. That at the moment we've got two proposals. We've got the merge Pubs and Comms and Climate Committee, and I think as a result of this meeting, look at the remit for Pubs and Comms in the time that we have while we still employ the Climate Emergency Coordinator, and come up with a solution to that by the time that contract needs to be considered. That's one proposal. The other proposal is Sarah's, which is to merge Pubs and Comms with service provision.
Can I just say, I think it was a great idea tacking it onto at the end of each each committee meeting.
Right.
Because that's evolved into.
Right. Okay. So your original proposal is.
Can Sarah make a proposal and she's not a member of the committee?
No.
Oh, she can't anyway. No, but we. Okay. A member of the public has suggested, but she's dropping it anyway. So am I right in understanding we are now proposing we merge the two as in Councillor Hogley's original proposal, and we spend the time till August working out how we deal with Pubs and Comms. Oh, before August, but you know, we look.
A very simple amendment. If we just changed it to merge and review, because I think as part of that review, we could almost certainly rethink how we manage Pubs and Comms.
Right.
So, but we effectively, for the budget purposes, we're merging the budget line of the two committees, and we're suggesting there's a review that may take place either side of the election.
Okay, Councillor Blacker.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask about the additional member of staff. I mean, I thought the situation was very urgent. That you know.
That's it's in a later part of the agenda, though, isn't it?
So,
I mean, we can agree this principle, and then when we talk about what the third member of staff will do, because we had quite a lively debate about that in staffing, we can see if this principle, I mean, it can be part of the review, can't it? In reviewing the merger of these two, that review will take into account the need for the new member of staff to be able to do planning, or whatever the clerk decides. Clerk.
Can I just say that in terms of the budget, it's about making sure that the staffing budget is agreed, and that therefore we know that the third member of staff is affordable.
Yeah.
That's the key.
What that member of staff does doesn't matter in terms of the budget.
Well, am I allowed to speak? I thought she was employed for climate emergency.
No, a new member. We're not talking about her. We're talking about employing a new assistant clerk of some kind, because we need one.
Sorry.
And in staffing, we talked about what they would cover and where we need them and what, you know, how best to deploy people's talents and all the rest. And the conclusion we came to in staffing was that Rich should be relieved of nearly all of planning to be able to use his skills as the responsible finance officer, I think.
Can I just check, Chair, through you, to the clerk, for the role that the climate emergency coordinator currently has, which is on a year contract, can that be ended early in order to align with the starting or allow some overlap?
Yeah, in order for her to be
The
employed
new
as a
assistant
clerk.
clerk.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Or
they have
the-
to be applied, people always have to apply in an application
Yeah, yeah.
process, but, and the current incumbent may wish to apply, but they may not wish to apply.
The contract allows for it to be ended early. I think it's a month.
So if she wished to
So-
apply
so
to
if-
be the third member of the clerking team,
Yeah.
we could finish paying her as as an outside supplier and
So there
pay-
doesn't have to be a long overlap,
Yeah.
although it may make sense
Mm.
if she wasn't to apply to have a month overlap anyway of any handover of any
Yes.
information, but I'm not sure how much in practice that would be.
Okay, I think we've got as far as we're going to get tonight. There's a lot of thinking to be done. The proposal is that we merge these two, as outlined by, and review their roles. All those in favour?
Is this to recommend to full council, or is this actually?
So, to take to full, as a recommended to full council, yeah. And that's everybody. Right, thank you. Now, we've overrun, so we need to... Are you going to stay for all the rest?
No, thank you for the
Right, so we move on to grant applications. We've done fair and funky. And the next round is there. So we're on to accounts for payment. Did anybody have any issues with any of the items under 222384 accounts for payment? They're, the first three are to note. The third one is actually to consider.
Chair, can I just make a general comment about these? As somebody who I didn't start looking at the note until early this afternoon, there were just pages and pages and pages of figures, and almost to the point where I hadn't given myself any time to study it. So I feel, if I'm honest, I'm going to nod this through because I haven't had time to study it. But it's more of a reflection of, I don't think it's any way to run a ballroom, because I think basically we're all getting huge amounts of data. And I know there's probably a legal obligation to report it in that way, but it just feels like I'm not studying it enough to make an informed decision, but I'm being asked to vote it through. And it's just a frustration really with the amount of papers that we've got, and they're very confusing.
Well, I can simplify a lot of it, because I've been through it in some detail, and there are several of these multiple pages where, like the next 5 pages, there's no transaction, so we can happily nod those. Things like bank statements and whatnot, quite a number of them, nothing has happened. So if we go back through them one by one, and we'll make it as fast as we can. And I do take your point, but we've discussed this with Rich, there really isn't any way of not having this much paperwork. I mean, we'd all like less paperwork, Rachel.
I think, yeah, I'd just say, I mean, on the face of it, you sort of think, oh my goodness, there's hundreds of pages, but actually, they've got, as you get used to being on that, you know, they've got a system of, you know, you recognise and you pick up, you know, just, in the end, you have to read the papers, you know, if you're going to note them or comment on them or whatever, and actually, I appreciate it takes time for people, but it's important that we see like all the different organisations that have been awarded grants. It's important that we've got the opportunity to review that detail, and you know.
So let's whip through them all. Let's go through. Under number 84, we've got noting the chairman's expenses for dinner, noting the schedules of payments and noting the completed schedules of payments for September and October.
Yeah.
Do we note those?
Yes.
Yes.
To consider the month-to-month transactions, which is I, which is the sideways one.
I mean, can I just comment, Chair?
Yeah.
Just those ones, for example, I think are actually, yes, they're boring to some extent, but actually it's really important that we've got an idea of what things
Yeah.
cost money. Like it might be the printing or whatever, and obviously it's then the budget information which the deputy clerk helpfully highlights, percentage payment, and that's where we can pick up things that are above or below what was expected. But it's quite useful information to just be aware of.
Okay, I don't think we're arguing about that, Rachel. So the sideways, the cash flow. I couldn't see anything to query in there that I didn't understand. Does anybody else? No? Right, so we've considered that. And we're considering approving it. Have we approved it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Then the next one is bank statement, where there are no transactions. The same is true of the next 1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't think you need to go through them all, I think you just need to approve them in a block. Really.
Right, okay.
Unless you've got any queries, that's the point.
I didn't have any queries in any of these, and I did read them. Did anybody else?
No.
Right, so that's H5 approved, and similarly October, that's September and October 85, income and expenditure.
Oh, right, sorry, could I just, if we're on 85, Chair, could I just say there's a point given somewhere about printing not being in colour.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. But
Yes.
Unless it's too expensive in colour. But I'd also, can we feed back to councillors again that it's really advantageous for everybody if they are prepared to use electronic devices rather than printing.
Or print their own.
Or print their own, because I think a lot of councillors, I think it's just worth reminding people that actually it costs money to print a lot. And the other thing I just wanted to ask for 85, and I can't read my writing whether it's II or IV. The toilet, I was just interested that the toilet donations were, we'd already had £1,931 and the budget anticipated amount was 2,000. So I thought actually that was quite encouraging because it looks like we're going to get over the 2,000. I know historically we used to get about 5,000.
Yeah, well, we're recovering after COVID, I suppose.
Yeah.
I kind of underestimated the income, to be honest.
Yeah. Safer that way.
Yeah.
I've lost some minutes of paper here trying to speed this up. I've slowed it down.
Chair,
Thank you.
So,
Okay. Income and expenditure by body, budget heading. So the others on this page, on page 4, are self-explanatory. I think. Anybody got any problems? I need to look at your page 5. Mine's page 5.
Chair, can I just ask- Can I just ask Rich? So will we list in the budget effectively that as a debt and an income? So we've had some income, but we've still got some outstanding debt. So we report it as both.
Because we use an income and expenditure approach, so I've already accounted for the last year's figures that there was that debt there, so it accrues to last year's figures. So it shows it shows as a receipt in this year in terms of where it actually was accounted to. It accounts to last year's figures.
Okay.
The programme does do all that work for you. You don't actually have to do anything. Have you found it?
I don't. No, I'm completely lost. All my bits and paper. Right. Solar panels. We had a letter from St Wilshire. I imagine you've seen. Right. You just handed me this.
Lost page 5, I think.
Right, I've got page 5. That much I can do.
Okay.
It's 6 I haven't got, I think.
Okay, do fine.
Okay, sorry, I lost it there completely because I can't find it. Public toilets is self-explanatory. The dog waste is becoming a big issue because, I mean, constantly on the Honley Facebook page, you get people saying somebody's been along and taken them all. Oh, they were there last night, but there's none this morning.
Took 400. Yeah, 400.
Yeah, somebody took 400 from the Jagger Lane Rag.
But that's something for service provision to discuss.
But it's...
There is an increase in the budget requested from service provision in line with that, but that doesn't answer the problem of people nicking the bags.
I mean, frankly, I don't feel inclined to give away 400 bags to one person and pay for... I mean, I don't see why we should pay for one person to get 400 bags, or one shop to get 400 bags. But I don't know how we manage that.
That's for
The
that.
service provision.
So, yeah. So that'll be over, the phone boxes will be over, and all the rest is obvious why they are over.
Can I, Chair, can I just raise something with the youth facilities? It's just, sorry, I didn't pick it up under 83. There was a comment about service provision next awarding grants at the end of February, but as far as I can see, service provision has spent all its money that it would issue in grants. So I think just important that people are aware that they wouldn't have more grants that they could offer.
I think Rich has got that in hand.
I do.
When we come on to individual, when we come on to the budgets and whatnot of each committee.
I don't think I have.
Haven't you? No, Rich.
Chair,
James,
just to say, the Service Provision Committee meeting resolved to ask Council to release further money so that it could consider grants in the next round. And that will go to full Council on the 12th of December.
Okay. So they've got more.
Well, if it's very perfect,
Okay.
okay.
Because
Right.
we're aware of the situation later, it's just right. That might make it a cycle for someone.
Right, the earmarked reserves, again, are fairly self-explanatory. There's nothing startling there, or the only question, and I think it's a big question given that we are now not, we don't have too much earmarked reserves, is this whole £50,000 for children's playgrounds, and that was originally going to be to work alongside Kirklees. Then we had discussions with, then Kirklees improved several of the playgrounds, and then we had discussions with Councillor Davies and we've had correspondence with an officer about, and they're saying, well, we'll always be happy to take 50,000 off you. And then there are discussions about whether that should be spent on one place in Home First, which has been suggested, which is an interesting proposition, but not very appealing to me. And then, but there has also been discussion of using considerable sums from the charity, the land charity, for similar uses. And I wonder if we should be saying that 50,000 could remain earmarked for youth, but perhaps not specifically earmarked for playgrounds. I don't know, that is a thought which I lob into the meeting. Councillor Carr.
There's a helpful note on Rich's final thoughts right at the end of the agenda, isn't there, about the budget, because if that's 50 in, it makes a significant difference to the need to raise the precepts. My question to, I suppose it's to Rich really, I could see that email thread seem to end in the middle of October, but has nothing come in since?
No.
I mean, I think they've sort of answered the question, because if they're not, if you offer them 50,000 and they can't be bothered to reply and actually grab it, then would they ever spend it? And they've been a bit lukewarm about even taking the offer in the first place. It just feels like it's been a bit of a farce really. It was put there with a good intent, and it just feels as if they're not using it. If they can't use it, I'd say, well, we'll take it back then.
Yeah,
It's my
that's
view.
my feeling, I have to say.
Chair, I appreciate £50,000 is a lot of money, and I think there's a question as to whether we reduce the amount we earmark, but I still maintain that the condition and current state of both Victoria Park's playground and Sands playground, unlike some of the playgrounds in Honley that have been invested in, which is great, are not in a great state, and therefore I think we should set aside some money to allow us to support the implementation of improved playground provision in Home Firm.
Right.
And I think it would be a shame, we only set it aside for the 1 year, and to be fair, we haven't, we didn't really pick up the discussions again with Kirkby still relatively recently. I think it would be a shame just to say, oh, well, too bad, we're taking it back in again. I think we should at least retain, say, £25,000.
Well, my suggestion was that it could well be earmarked for use, and a goodly lump of it could well go to precisely what you're talking about, but that we kind of release it from being specifically playground, was all I was.
Yeah, I suppose youth is a, well, yeah, I mean, I can see that argument, but I can also see that youth provision could be spent in a different way. It would be, say, officer time, rather than spending it on an asset, and an asset that would have longevity over that of a officer.
It was put on hold because the Kirklees councillor, who's the parish councillor, told us it wasn't needed. That's why it was kicked into the long grass. Paul Davison did that.
But what Councillor Hogley is saying is that they may think it wasn't needed, but it was, because they haven't done anything for Sands and Victoria Park.
Well, that might not be on the works programme anyway.
No,
That's the
I
problem,
know.
the challenge we've got with, we can't identify the works programme for the council's playground. I'm not questioning what Rachel's saying.
Councillor Greaves has got his hand up.
John?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Sands isn't on the playable spaces strategy. I think that's and same as Victoria Park. I don't know. I think Paul's, Councillor Davis's response was given on the basis of being aware of what the full programme was. So when he said that, that there isn't a need for it, I'm assuming that he's done that. There's three lots of funding for park improvements. The playable spaces strategy, which is a big lump of money. The section 106 from local housing developments. There's also the ongoing parks maintenance budgets. So, personally, I actually don't see the need for this any longer. And in view of the fact that Land Charity is looking for how to use its funds, I would have said, if there was something like this, that may be something to chuck in the direction of Land Charity. So I don't see the need to earmark this 50,000 any longer. I think we had that answer from Councillor Davies, but if there's any doubt, then perhaps it'd be worth just checking with Home Valley South Ward councillors what the parks programme is for the next few years. Because we've had a detailed response. There's been a shuffling around of officers, but next on the list for us is the Meltham ones, and then Meltham Road in Honley. So.
Well, at the moment, we're just noting that it is earmarked. We can come to when we set the budget, and we do need to get a move on because we've got our own budget and the council budget to set. So, can we move on to?
Well, in that case, the action perhaps would be to clarify that point about whether there's parks works intended within Home Valley South, and it would be easier, I suspect, to ask the ward councillors what they're aware of, because there has been some movement in officers. So, if there's an action for it, it might be just to reconfirm with Councillor Davies what work is proposed for which parks.
We need to reach a conclusion in this meeting. So, one way or another, not at this point, but later on, we're going to have to come to some conclusions. And, without that information, I think. 22386, solar panels for home for toilets. We want them Tim Wilshaw feels they shouldn't be allowed because they'll spawn, it's, you know, it's listed and next to a listed building in a conservation area. We will get guidance from Kirklees, I'm just alerting you to, that's coming up. The Almost viewpoint, I don't think that's, it's, we're not that
So
through.
we're not, we've got to consider the solar panels.
The solar panels, sorry.
Can I speak on this? Because
Yeah.
everyone brought it forward. This is basically, I mean, it's been talked about a little bit in the past, but what I felt that we could do as part of the climate emergency things is look at the assets that we own and whether we can make them more efficient and make use of renewable energy. So I looked into viability of solar panels on the roof. Regrettably, the company that I've contacted haven't been able to give me an indicative quote yet, which is very annoying. But I did contact the planning people in Kirklees to see whether it was a no-no, because it is in a conservation area, but because of the nature of the building, it's potentially possible. I mean, as resident Tim Walshaw's pointed out, you would need a planning application, and that's true, and there was no question of us progressing without a planning application. It was just, I was keen that given the budgetary discussions, my sense is probably putting solar panels on the home first toilets would cost in the region of £5,000, and I just wanted to throw it in there as what was the general view on whether this was something that was worth looking at. It might be that there's enough budget left in the current climate emergency budget to cover most of that anyway, but again, I put it forward purely because I was conscious that there were budgetary considerations, and therefore I didn't want it lost.
Okay, Charles?
So, in terms of funding something like this, am I not right in thinking Climate Emergencies Committee carries a budget for this nature of work? As to whether to, so saying Mr Walshaw's comments, if he wishes to object, as and when it comes to a plan application, you can do so at that stage. And I guess the question is going to be, would it be beneficial to do it on this building as opposed to somewhere else? So that would be, what's the cost benefit? So what energy usage is there currently? You know, what would it save? So I would have said there's a bit more work to do before we push ahead with it. But in terms of creating a budget line, what's in the climate emergency budget for works of this nature?
Well, I think we still have 2,500 left in energy, don't we?
Yeah, but this is going to drop into the next financial year, isn't it? So it's what's in there for climate emergency committee.
And that's to be discussed.
Well, that's, probably coming up.
Okay, well, what's been proposed,
The same as last year.
which is
36,000, I think,
Which includes the cost of the,
minus the cost of the climate emergency
that's
coordinator.
about 22 and a half.
22.5.
So there's project funds there.
Budget funds on it.
Right. So there's funds in the Climate Emergency Committee?
Yeah.
Right,
So
okay.
there's, 10,000 for energy, I think that's right, isn't it? 10,000 for energy related strategy.
Well, given, assuming that the cost benefit analysis says it will save us money, or save the climate something, and assuming planning approval, we could, I mean, if it doesn't get planning approval, then the money just goes back into the budget and bank. Council can't.
I suppose you could argue this is, firstly I support it. I think if it can be done and it gives a cost saving, and we've got large bills on that premises anyway. And also it's a demonstration project bang in the heart of town. It's, you know, for all those reasons we should do it. But if it's our building and there are toilets and it's under service provision, then arguably why should another committee? I don't really care where the money comes from. I think it's important that it's funded if we can do it. If we get a viable solution, I'd like to think the parish supported it. But whether you take it out of service provision budget for building improvement or climate change,
As a point
it's
of
all very
principle,
here and there,
yeah.
but there is a different beast.
Can I propose then that we agree the principle of investigating it further with through the climate emergency committee using existing budgets?
And it could revert to service provision in future years if there are costs for maintenance and whatnot. Okay, thank
So do we
you.
need to vote on that?
Yes, all those in favour? Thank you. The Home Loss topograph, do you want to talk about it, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm not, I got a bit lost in the discussions that we had in publications and communications about how we funded this. Basically what this is, just to remind people, is a proposal I made a while ago when I was finishing my year as chair to create a topograph, which is something that tells you what you can see as a view in distance, and from the top of Home Loss, because I thought it was a nice thing to have, and it's an obvious place to have it, and you can see the whole of Home Valley, and I think generally the council were fairly supportive of it. We've obviously got a reserve at the moment, so I think £935 or £937, whatever was left over from my
It's
chair.
round about a
Yeah.
thousand.
And I mean, clearly that would not pay for it in itself. But I've done some further investigation and quotes of doing something that was in bronze, for example. Then you'd be looking at more like £10,000 to £12,000. So I'm now looking at an option which Councillor Green suggested, which was doing something that's etched into a stone, and I think that will cost more in the region of £5,000 to £6,000.
Would be
obviously
harder
couldn't
to-
be nicked.
presumably would be harder to pinch.
It would, particularly if it was a big stone.
Yes.
It's like a gravestone. Is that what they should be doing, like is that what they are?
Yeah, but it wouldn't just be a big gravestone, it'd be like hopefully a massive
yeah,
block
no,
with
yeah.
it all, with all
You want a big, heavy, deep.
well, exactly. So I've made contact with Johnson's Wellfield, which is a quarry that's only a couple of miles away, because they're a local organisation that does that sort of thing. So I'm trying to get a slightly more refined cost, but again, this is something where it was originally proposed at full council, I suppose, and I was conscious that it has an earmark reserve that's very small, but in order to actually deliver it, it's likely to need in the region of, well, I think if the stone is an option, probably £5,000 to £6,000 rather than the bronze, which is very expensive. So again, I just wanted to flag up that.
How much do you feel we should earmark, realistically? What do you think is the best amount for us to earmark?
Well, I think if we were able to add another £5,000 to the existing earmarked reserve for it, then that would allow us to,
do a stone
it.
one?
yes,
Right.
that's my sense.
Okay. Does everybody feel that's a good idea? All those in favour? No. Tenancies. Okay. Is there anything we need to do about either of the tenancies? It says here to consider any further action. I think it's, well, we will keep it when they get a permanent tenancy agreement. We'll obviously be aware of it. Okay, garages and allotments. It's just to note the information there. The external auditor. We have used PK off Littlejohn for a while. It's widely used among councils and things. Are we content to continue with that? Or is it- Oh, right. I thought we chose our auditors. Do we choose the
You choose the
internal?
internal.
Oh, right. The internal, Doug's was on, well, Rich and Doug's weren't able to do the internal check. It's been delayed and it's
No,
going.
No, it's done that.
Oh, right.
It was delayed last time we spoke, I think.
Oh, right.
We've done it, it was fine. And despite what I said about all the numbers and papers, when you actually do that process,
Yes.
and you realise just how thorough and how neat and how well filed it is, although it's a bit of a tedious job, it's made much easier due to the diligence of the officers.
It is.
Thank you, Councillor.
It is indeed. When you do that job, you fully appreciate the farting about that goes into it. Number 90, banking. Are we happy to approve the reformatted and updated list of regular payments outlined on O?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
What, can I just ask why, on your new contract, why is it maintenance contract on twice.
Sorry.
There's two separate contracts.
Oh, there are two separate
Yeah.
contracts, it just looks identical.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Is it just a mistake?
Well, I don't know, it's just, the two lines are identical, it may refer to this contract, but I couldn't tell, I was
Did it say toilets on one and vegetables on the other?
something like that, maybe.
Which document are we looking at?
It's,
Page 83.
oh,
Oh.
it's document,
Doesn't it say in the service column on the right?
It's the service maintenance contract.
That's the same thing.
Just a couple of pages ago.
I can't see, I can't read mine, it's so tiny.
The two lines are identical.
Okay, I'll change it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well done, Mary. Financial records. To note that they've been posted, I think we all had an email about that anyway. Maintenance contractors, to note, service provision is renewed, although the working group is looking at the nature of contracts. And that a new one will be done, presumably in the light of the working group. Risk assessment. Although there's a lot of it, there was nothing there that struck me as comment-worthy or question-worthy, really. Which brings us to the budgets. Now, we are 20 minutes behind, so please, if you speak, don't speak to say the same as the person before and be as brief as you can. The first one is to note just the current standing of the committees and where they are and where they stand with their current budgets. And then there is, Rich has done nice little summaries. If I can find them. Do you want to talk us through
Yeah,
them?
I'm saying you ended up with two, each one has got two very similar printouts with regard to the budgets. The reason I had to do that was because you get the option of a detailed report or a summary report, and there's bits in each that I need to pass on, i.e. in the detailed report, it's where it records when you've spent money from the earmark reserve or as a requirement. And in the summary report, it's where it records the projected, so it's where I record what I project is the spending for the entire year ahead. So that's why you ended up with two similar reports. It is a bit confusing, I understand. Shall I just work through?
Yes,
I mean,
just
perhaps we could just work through because there's obviously ones which are much less controversial than others. You know, there's ones which are where the budget is going down, and where the committees have asked for a budget to be less. So I suspect we should just work through those and approve them. And then,
do the easy ones
yeah,
first.
exactly.
Okay.
And then head for the other ones. So planning this current year, they had a budget of £10,000. They've spent nothing yet. They've asked for 3,000 to be earmarked to council next month with regards to Home First Market, with the nascent market. So that might be 3,000 might be gone from that purpose, but otherwise we're still left with 7,000, which we are going to discuss at the next meeting. But I don't think we've had a lot of discussion as to where we're going with that.
I need to ask a question of somebody who has said they can't speak, but I am concerned about 3,000 for the market when I think it could very likely fail.
It's only an earmark reserve. It's not.
Oh, right.
Not spending.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
not spending. It's
Okay.
more a gesture. It's more us saying we think Home First should have a market. It's not for Home First Forward.
Right.
It's for Home First Market,
Okay.
and it's saying we value it.
Douglas.
I know it's last item on the agenda anyway, but I think in light of that letter, which is very enlightening from Poppleton, if they did go for some sort of monthly market, and they're doing these all over the place now, as you mentioned, then they could still spend a budget. So I think it's worth having a budget there if people want to do that type of activity. So I'll support that budget line being in, but as Rich says, they'd still have to, it's only sat there in reserves, isn't it? Until they come forward with a proposal, we'd have to discuss it.
Well, it's not sat anywhere yet, but
But I'd agree to keep it in the.
Okay, Charles?
Sorry, is this so planning can make a grant?
no, not really. The money it's money from planning. It's part of the planning's budget. We didn't have a budget line that it fitted really. It doesn't really fit with. It's not an asset, so it's not really it's not really something that could ask the assets for. It's not really a project. It's not really something that service provision could fund. So we were trying to find somewhere where money was potentially available, and it was looked at on the basis that it's an important place-making aspect of the Home Valley.
So is this part of the expanded remit of planning, where it's moved away from dealing with planning, that it's now dealing
Well,
with?
it's from the neighbourhood plan. It's an outcome of the neighbourhood plan. It's
Well,
Which is part of planning. I know you think it's mission creep, but it
I don't
seems to
think
me
it's mission creep at all. I think it's gone off at a tangent.
Well, I think it's an excellent thing, so we'll have to agree to disagree on that.
Well, I've never known a planning committee of that, but whatever.
So who do you think should be dealing with this then?
If anybody, it would be a grant, or it would be, it would be a grant. Planning, that planning committee, has there been a redrafting of the scheme of delegations to cover this expanded remit that it's assumed for itself?
Well,
Because I haven't seen it at
hang
full
on,
council where full council has
There's
agreed.
been a lengthy discussion where there were 51 things in the neighbourhood plan that fell to the planning committee. And we've been discussing how many of them we can manage. And this being involved in this sort of thing is very much part of the neighbourhood plan's vision of the planning committee's role. And it has been discussed.
Chair, just that, I think that the reality is the original market application came into finance and management, but as Deputy Clerk has outlined, there wasn't an obvious fit with the grants as they currently sit. Obviously, the Grants Working Party will eventually announce, reveal this new approach to grants, but it's not the intention that then planning becomes a grant-making, a grant-giving committee. It's more the fact that we have £10,000 set aside to support the elements of the neighbourhood plan, and as has been outlined, having a market was something that was supported through the consultation process. It was things that came up through that, and therefore by planning actually having this budget of £10,000, of which it hasn't spent any, there was a sense that this was an opportunity to earmark a bit of money to support the principle of retaining some sort of market provision, it doesn't matter who it's delivered by, in Home Firth, because that's something which local people in the community told us they wanted to retain. So it's sort of finding money from a budget which hadn't been spent, rather than planning trying to seize the opportunity to award grants.
So the application from planning is for how much for next year?
3,000.
3,000 for next year. Are we happy with that? All those in favour? Carried. Climate emergency.
So climate emergency asked for the same budget as they had last year, but we really needed to take out, because since the climate emergency coordinator was employed, the salaries for that role have been rather messy, because as it was set up, it was funded through the community mobilisation pot of the climate emergency budget lines, It causes problems though with regard to how we administratively deal with it. I know Councillor Hobley in the past has said that she was finding it hard tracking how much money they had left because the salary was in there as well. It was quite challenging. So I asked if we could move the salary out. Basically, obviously we've got potentially this new role. We need to kind of bring all the staff into one place, i.e. up in salaries and under staffing under the council heading rather than climate emergency. So they asked for the same budget, but I essentially deducted 13,500, which was approximately would be the end of year total of the climate emergency coordinator salary and on costs, and that rolled out at 22 and 20.
23.
22 and a half.
23.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to object, ask questions, or shall we move to a vote on it? A vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Pubs and comms.
Sorry, Chair. I was going to ask a clarification.
22,500.
Hang on.
Well, on Rich's note, you're saying it says put in the basically transferring that post from the 1st of April. So if we transfer that post, that person from the 1st of April would be an employee. So it also means we're ending that contract before the 1st of April. Is that what we've agreed?
No, I think we're just agreed to move it to a different column, not to change her status.
Yeah, that's right.
It's moving it to a different box in the accounts, not changing the status.
It doesn't really matter where it's coming from.
So salaries, we can pay freelancers out of the salary budget line.
She's not a freelancer, she's our staff.
Oh, is she? Right, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realise that.
But we're not changing her contract, we're just putting her in a different
That's
account.
fine.
Yeah, it's just an administrative thing, really.
Okay, so we've approved climate emergency. So,
The next one was
Pubs and comms.
Pubs and comms, yeah. We wanted a very small increase, just £150. Took cuts on some budgets. Obviously, the Royal Events thing isn't going to have quite the same need as it did this current year, so that's going to be reduced. And they have asked for a new what was it?
It's civic events?
Civic events budget.
okay,
and then others are kind of inflation related.
Any queries, comments, objections? Or straight to vote?
Can I just question one thing, which I know I picked up with Rich in an email, but I think out of last year's budget, the Royal Events had £10,000 of it for the Jubilee Wildflower and Tree project. Basically, paid for everything now he's paid for, and there is just over £3,000 left. So does that just go into general reserves?
Well, unless you via it somewhere, you can via it, or ask council to via it.
Okay, because I just wondered if there's an opportunity to via that remainder into the Viewpoint project.
Yeah, because as it stands in terms of this year's report, as I understood it, I was wrong when I actually looked at the video. Myself and Jen thought that it had been agreed to pay towards the Viewpoint from the Royal Events budget. You know, it was going to be a coronation related topograph. However, having seen it, they didn't actually vote on it, and therefore that 9935, that isn't right. It's just 935, and like as Councillor Hobley says, there is the potential there to via the 3,000 from the Royal Events budget to
The unspent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wonder if we could fire the unspent left over from that project into it and then possibly
Ask for another
top it
5.
up for another, well, not necessarily another 5, but another 2, so that then that's equivalent of the £5,000 we talked about before. But at least it, you know, it's like the savings for one can go towards the next rather than it just going into the general reserves.
Can you buy into earmark reserves?
You can't, no, but you can via from, well, no, you wouldn't become via it, you just move, you just wait for the year to end and just move it.
Yes, because it would in theory at the year end it would go into only general reserves,
That's
wouldn't
right,
it? And you
that's
then
right.
earmark it
That's
for
right,
the new year.
that's right. So that's,
I suppose what I'd say for the top graph, potentially,
well,
we could spend it in this financial year.
I've created a budget line for the topograph, so you could via it from the budget line, the Royal Events budget line to the topograph budget line.
But the Royal Events will need their money in this financial year. I mean, I know the coronation isn't till next financial year, but it's only.
They've got 10,000 in the earmark reserve anyway. This is the.
Oh, you're
this
talking
is
about the
budget we're
unspent,
talking about.
right, sorry.
That's the budget.
So
I've lost. I'm sorry, Richie. I think you've lost Rachel as well. I think there's at least 2 of us in this room.
So in the budget line is what was set up for the tree planting and bee bonds thing. In that budget line, there's 3,000 plus left. I think 3,300.
yes,
There's not much else to be done in terms of that. There's £1,000 already in the grants pot and in the special projects pot. There's already money there for to give out 10 times £100 grants to community groups. That's all sorted. But it's whether something's done with this £3,000.
Right. So the question is, do we want to via it now, and we'll have to go to council to do that, or do we want to let it just go into general reserves and then earmark it out of general reserves at the end of the year?
Well, it needs to go to council regardless. So.
Right.
I suppose my preference would be that we via it so that it's accessible this financial year.
Right. Good
So that,
idea.
because my aspiration anyway is to try and get the topograph done in time for the coronation, irrespective of whether it's not formally for the coronation, because it's, well, to be fair, from a personal perspective, it's when I finish on the council, so afterwards it should be difficult to manage projects.
Yeah, I mean, I tended to think it was a good idea that you know, having it as a coronation related thing is a good idea. But yeah, so it was not bad. But that wasn't about this year's. This was about the earmark stuff.
So
So do you want to vote? Do you want to vote on
yes,
that?
do you all approve that we via the remaining 3 odd, 3.5?
You
Recommend to full council that they via this 3 odd grand into the topograph from the platinum. All those in favour?
So Mary,
Oh, Mary.
Let's make a general point really, which is about the special projects line, commercial events, the coronation, like beacon lighting, which the coronation is in May. I mean, it's very close to, you know, to the end of the beginning of the financial year.
This
And
year's
it would be-
expenditure.
and it would be this year's expenditure. I think people are going to.
Yeah. Now we'll spend next to nothing on it next year, one hopes, but this year we're spending on 2 lots of royal events. If Charles had just had his coronation a bit later, it would have been much simpler. Okay, so do we approve the viring of that money? All those in favour? Yeah, we do. Staffing committee.
Sorry, Chair, can I just double check then that it's going to be then corrected that where it says home mosque viewpoint it should just be 935, shouldn't it? Not.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
95.
That's fine.
Right, do you want to talk us through staffing, Rich?
Yeah. So staffing this year is going to be this is a little confusing again, as I said before about, that's why you've got climate emergency stuff as a separate couple of
Yeah,
pages
yeah.
to mine and Jen's. It does make it administratively quite difficult, so removing that would be very useful. So we will be over budget this year. Both myself and Jen got two pay uplifts. One, the sort of general national pay award, and then we got one at each as well for completing qualification. So that's why we're rather over budget this year on that. The climate emergency coordinator also got an uplift as well. So I think we're going to be about, did I say about 6,000 over or something like that?
For content.
And then next,
4,000 you said.
oh, did I say 4,000? And then next year, the staffing committees discussed the kind of pay level of this, the assistant clerk, and they've suggested that the assistant clerk be paid at between column 18 and 23. So this is going to be a higher paid role than the climate emergency coordinator. So that's why another reason why that will have gone off that budget line. So the 79,792 would be for those reasons. I suspect it's still lower than it was under the previous, the clerk before this.
Really?
Taking account of the extra
Yes.
administrative hours. I mean.
Questions, objections, or vote? Okay, we'll vote. All those in favour? Passed. Right. Service provision.
So service provision, obviously, this one's a much more challenging one because it's a lot of extra money. I do think there's probably things we can do to kind of smooth things a bit, but this is where I was thinking about the playground money, that it would make this a lot smoother than it actually is, because in terms of this year, as you can see, there's how much will be over there? 4, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, about £20,000 over budget, as you see there. That's quite a hefty chunk. And then this year they've asked for an increase of 41,000 over the previous year, which again is a hefty chunk.
When you say over the previous year, do you mean their budget for the previous year or their expenditure for the previous year?
Budget.
So it's only 21,000 over this year if you look at their expenditure, because they've had an additional 20, have they not?
Well, you could look at it like that, but yeah, it's not.
They've spent, they've spent 20 more than the 22-23 budget, or will have by the end of the year. You just said.
I don't think so.
You said there'll be 20 grand over.
Yeah, there'll be 20 grand over this year's budget in their expenditure over income, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not 41,000 over 22-23, it's 21,000.
No, it's 41,000 over the set budget. We're setting
Right,
the budget.
but
No,
it's
not,
only 21,000 more to
that's
spend.
That's not really relevant. We're trying to work out the budget. Not.
I think it matters that we nail this down. I understand we're doing the budget, but we also need to know how much they will have to spend. And they won't have 41,000 more than they did this year. They'll have 21,000 more than they did yesterday because they have 20 grand vied.
Oh, I see. In terms of giving extra money by the council.
Yes.
Right.
So is service provision happy to have 21,000 more than it did this year? You won't have 41, you'll have 21.
I don't think we can afford the 21. This is the point.
Okay, we have 3 questions. Charles, then Doug, then Rachel.
Yeah, I really do not understand the rationale behind the Home First Civic Hall new addition. It seems bizarre to if the reason for it is the commentary, it seems bizarre. I think also there are some areas of overspend which are linked to increased costs, so it's appropriate to reflect that increased costs. So we kind of be looking at what's been committed year to date. So, for example, the toilets are going to be ones where we need that bit of uplift. In terms of youth grants and youth facilities, I thought that was going to be one and the same rather than two separate items. But so there may be room to just pull that like that just a little bit. What the key one to ask about really is the Home First Civic Hall, 15,000. The discipline of setting the budget is you can only ask for the money from ratepayers for a purpose. What's the purpose?
Is that they have a rolling programme of works, and I think the committee wanted it to be on a similar level and status as Honley Library, where they get 15,000 that they need for their rolling programme of work.
Well, that's not for a rolling programme of works, is it?
Well, I think they were assuming it was.
Yeah, there is a rolling programme of works, and it's not going to go away.
No, the money for Honley Library is to cover the running costs of the library.
But, hang on, well, let's take the other questions and we'll come back to that. Doug's?
Yeah, I think, or partly to back up what Charles said, there's basically three stories in this request, isn't there? There's firstly, what do we do with our buildings, which is sort of our responsibilities but managed by third parties. And it's true what's been said in that it does seem as if there's not a parity there, but the issue is in Honley we're actually paying the utility bills, whereas we're not here. The other stuff is things that are outside of our control. I mean, basically the toilets cost more, there's people using more bin bags. So I think that one, is, if we're going to continue to provide those services, then I think there's very little we can do about those budget lines. Where there is an opportunity to discuss things, the committee, and from other conversations we've had, we're quite ambitious in terms of the youth work. The council basically withdrawn completely from that. The council's always had a youth budget line called Youth Facilities, which isn't a particularly helpful line. Used to always go to Cafe 100. What's happened in the last couple of years, we've had, last year we would have overspent as well, but two key organisations pulled out at the last minute. This year we had 4 applications, all asking 5,000 for an 8,000 budget line, and then we've got small applications from cricket clubs and others, which took us way over, which is why we ended up teaming and labelling and moving some of those requests to other committees, and we asked for the approval to go over. We'd rather, and we're in strategic conversations with a youth coordinator provider, Kirklees Youth Alliance, to effectively create a commissioning pot or a grant pot, whichever that might turn out. But basically we would allocate £25,000 per year of council funds for significant youth projects, and it's youth work, not some a bit of 100 quid here for the cricket club. This is actually youth work. We need to make a decision. We either want to do that or we don't want to do that, and if we are going to do it, we've got to find out where we fund it. But I think that's a debate worth having, and something I'd want to see have at full council. But I'm aware it creates a pressure because we're increasing the budget from 8 to 25. And it is a big jump. I personally think that's something this council should look to support.
Councillor Hogley?
A couple of things on the youth grants and youth facilities. Effectively, then we're saying we've got a budget of what is being asked for is 33,000. Is that right? To cover all those things. I mean, personally, I think there is a discussion to be had about whether we want to provide youth workers. I don't see the need to have youth grants and youth facilities separately, and I don't think we need £33,000 of our monies on just those items seems quite a lot to me, without having to raise the precept, which I'm not a fan of. But I think there's an opportunity to reduce the costs of that. The Home Firth Civic Hall, I'm with Councillor Greaves on this. I don't know. I don't get that. The whole point of the Home Firth Civic Hall, when it was taken on, we secured its holding in the community and it continuing to function. But the business plan of the Civic Hall was built on it being sustainable. We pay an annual rent to you as an anchor tenant. We are effectively helping support its ongoing running. Whereas the Honley Library does not have the opportunity to rent out its space and employ staff to generate income. And from what I can see, the Civic Hall is doing, I know there's been challenges of COVID, but through having their paid staff, they've been able to access support funding, and they're doing a great job at gradually building up money and in the sense of being able to take on projects. Obviously, they still have the opportunity to access capital grants as they have to date, and we've obviously got the fire escape, which one day
There's a note to say they're going to request 40 grand in February.
Yeah, so I don't think we should give them an annual, you just get £15,000 because as I say, we're paying as a tenant, and it's very different to Honley Library, which we recognised when we took it on, that actually there were running costs that if we didn't pick them up, it just couldn't function. That's very different to here, where yes, you could spend millions in this building making it brilliant, couldn't you? And I just think that's just money we're giving away without controls on it, and I don't think it's necessary. Personally, I wouldn't support setting aside 15,000 for that, and I would also like the youth things. I don't think youth grants, again, it's expanding our grants. If we retain the level of youth grants and then adding on youth facilities as a separate entity, I think then there's a potential for more and more grants ending up being around football strips and those other things, which in the end, nice to have, but they're not really about essential provision for youth facilities. And I'd rather if we're going to spend some money on youth provision, it should be on the youth clubs and what support workers identify as necessary, not nice to haves for sports clubs and music groups or whatever. So I wouldn't support the level of uplift associated with that, because I think we're making it too big.
Sean, do you want to say?
Yeah, so through you, Chair, is what Rachel's saying is get rid of those miscellaneous grants and just concentrate on a youth provision, youth clubs, etc.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
There is the F&M grants,
Yeah, well, exactly. There's another grant.
which is where they all used to go to.
Yeah.
And again, one of the mission creeps is that we've got grants in every single place now, which makes it quite difficult to know who should go into where for what, and that would be consistent across the piece. And I would go further, and I would say that actually the budget line should be for the Home Valley Youth Alliance, and then we know exactly what the purpose of the money is. And
So
or
you're
the
saying,
Home Valley Youth Alliance partnership perhaps would be a more appropriate use.
so you're saying the little grants would come to F&M rather than service provision, essentially?
They'd be considered by them, but they wouldn't be added. That
Well,
8,000
the
wouldn't be added in.
service provision would be doing the Home Valley Youth Alliance, whatever it's called, and the little, the one-off grants would be coming to F&M. Okay, I understand.
But within the F&M budget, not adding in the service provision, £8 grand.
Right, Jen?
Can I just say, I think that would make it a much easier task for the clerking staff if service provision wasn't a grant giving body.
Fair point.
So I don't know. Are we happy to just how much in terms of youth facilities or what the Kirklees Youth Alliance? Shall we call it the Kirklees Youth Alliance budget, or and are we going to say 25,000?
Well, no, it would be the Home Valley Youth Alliance
Home Valley Youth
partnership.
Which may well be working with Kirklees, but would be.
Yeah, what's
And
for the
different
Home Valley?
This was certainly no. Susan in part of Kirklees.
No.
Kirklees Youth Alliance is a third sector body.
Yeah.
It's funded by Kirklees. But,
So I've rather lost track of how much we are proposing for what and
Chair.
what the total is.
Can I try and propose what I think we've agreed? I think, or what I propose then, as somebody who's been working on this outside and inside of the council, I think we're proposing there's a new budget line created. We basically delete the youth facilities line of £8,000, which is the grants budget, so that's just deleted completely. And then we add a new budget line, which I'd call youth work in the home valley, because that's what it's for. It's for youth work. It's not for sports clubs. It's not small grants. And that'll enable the committee to progress the work with Kirklees Youth Alliance to get a collaboration of the 4 youth projects to come together and put in a joined up bid to sort of secure the future of youth work in the home valley, and that have a £25,000 budget line.
25 instead of 8. Rich is just
No,
doing.
No, it was
it's
25
nothing
plus
instead of 8
8.
and 25 renamed.
Yeah.
Rich, have you got that?
Can I just ask though, that in advance of full council making presumably the final decision on that we get clarity on what we get for £25,000 and whether it's you know, what level of provision it is, and if the decision was made to reduce that, or conversely increase it, what that would do to the provision that's delivered. Because £25,000 sort of sounds like a nice round number, but it's about understanding what sits
I guess the bit for that would be to look at what we funded this year that would fall under that heading and how much was spent on it. So what we've given to Hungry Youth, what we've given to Cafe 100, what we've given to Phoenix, any of those other ones which are involved on youth work rather than on sports. That would be an idea.
Okay, but I think we need a little summary that says for that £25,000, we believe that the parish council will be able to therefore secure the youth work that allows X sessions for twice a week or 3 times a week. Or
Because
once a
otherwise
fortnight,
full council aren't going to buy a vague 25 grand's worth of nice stuff.
No.
Through you, Chair, we've got a slide. Basically, Susan from Kirklees Youth Alliance has produced a slide deck which explains some of this. But from my memory, it would basically give 50% funding. It would just work on the assumption that at least 3 organisations are doing 2 sessions of youth work each, and this would be 50% of the funding of the core officer costs for that work. But there is some projections that she's got with hourly rates and all that type of stuff, and that's why that figure hasn't just been plucked out of the air. It's actually based on some calculations she's done about the cost of youth provision for the core deliverers being Home Valley Youth, which may be, anyway, there's things going on. All these clubs have got their own challenges at the moment. It's Home Valley Youth, Cafe 100, and the work going on at the Phoenix Youth Club.
Honley.
Honley Youth, what do I call it?
Yeah, so everyone youth.
But I guess it just needs, we don't want a
Yeah,
slide, it just needs a summary.
Susan just provides something,
Because, and also, if a decision were made to only award, say, £15,000, what would that mean? Because in the end, if this all leads to asking to increase the precept, there will be a very lively debate at full council about whether that's
Yes,
appropriate.
indeed, that would.
And people, quite right, and then there will need to be an understanding of, well, if that was reduced, what would that mean?
So, Richard, Jen, have you got Susan Greenwood's contact details from when she came here to do the presentation?
We're copied into emails from her.
Look, how are the numbers looking now, and how much do we
Well-
then have to move to F&M? And how
Well,
much is
there's
good?
also the other recommendation to remove the 15,000 budget line.
No, I've taken that out. I think I do think that's sensible. Yeah. I mean, the difficulties we've got is in terms of trying to get to this, make sure we've got 3 months worth of net revenue expenditure to basically pay for the staff and to keep things rolling, like the toilets contracts and so on and so forth. So I think at present we have 115,000 in our reserves.
But there's probably quite a bit of in-house reserves that could be released.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we not need to discuss the other 2 committees? Or
We've got those to go yet.
Yeah.
Rich is just doing the sums. We are not skipping to full council yet. What I want to know is how much have we changed in service provision,
23,000.
and hang on, I'm asking Rich, not you, and how much are we taking out of service provision and putting into F&M for youth grant?
Nothing.
Well, I don't really put anything.
Right.
I mean, I think the thing to say about the projects and events, we for the last couple of years, I mean, we did double it a couple of years ago from 10,000 to 20,000, and certainly last year it was a chore to get people to apply for the £1,000 projects and events grant.
Right.
So
Right.
I do think there is some capacity there, and we did take on a few service provision grants, you know, like the Scouts
Yes.
ended up with us, and I think something else. So I've taken out the Civic Hall 15. I've
Chair, can I also just ask about the line item that's Christmas provision? Because at the moment, as that sits, as I understand it, consists of grant giving to two organisations, which I declare an interest in one of them, which one is Home First Christmas Team and the other is Homley Business Association to do their festive events. And the rest of it, as I understand it, is to pay for the trees that we buy from Kirklees. So if we were to want service provision,
And trees from TW Kirk that go to the villages.
yeah.
There's 5 other trees.
Okay. But I suppose at the moment it means that's a bit of a messy line because it's awarding grants to organisations and the rest of it's effectively an internal cost.
Well,
So
the working group is probably going to recommend that they become budget rather than grant things in each of their committees.
but without doing the groups that I am part of disservice, there's no particular reason why the council has to maintain giving those events, because that's what they are in the end, an annual commitment. They could also go into
that's very
the
true.
project and events
Very
budget
true.
to be compared to other, unless there's a desire for parish council to always contribute some money towards those groups to run things in Home First and Homley, you wouldn't need to retain grant giving to that. If they wanted it for a specific, just the event they do at the moment, or for a specific increase in purchasing, whatever it was, they could go to the standard F&M events budget.
And
Because
I think-
ultimately it is just an event. Why should
and I think
Christmas
that
be
was-
any different?
I think that was service provision's point as well about the patient transport service. That again, because I think you struggled getting them to even apply for a grant, didn't you?
Sorry, I don't understand. I've noted both Charles and Doug's, just a minute. I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying we shouldn't commit to paying for the Christmas lights every year?
I'm saying we could continue to commit to paying for the village trees and the Kirklees trees, but it seems a bit anomalous to me that just because it's a Christmas event, the two organised Christmas events should not be compared to the other events that happen at other times of year. Why should they get special?
So take £2,000 out of that budget.
Yeah, you could take £2,000 out of that budget. You could push up the projects and events budget by £2,000 if you wish, but I don't think you necessarily need to do so.
So if there were no Christmas lights in Homley next year, that would be fine.
Yeah, but there would be lights, because the money that is applied for by Homley each year is to run the event. And similarly, for Home First Christmas Team, is to run the event. They have the lights, they're all contribute. The Homley Business Association, as with Home First Christmas Team,
Is for
seek
the
contributions from
is for the switching on.
businesses, but it's for the events that they usually put in their application for.
And as Jen said before, it's another consolidation of the grant, so they all end up in F&M.
Right. Okay. Charles, then Doug's.
Yeah, I'd say where Rachel's coming from, but I'd come the opposite way with it. So, patient transport scheme, the £1,000 budget should be reinstated rather than grant. So, for me, finance and management was always the place to go to for a grant. Service provision was always about creating long-term partnerships, like the minibus. So, requiring the patient transport service to apply for this funding each year is just putting a burden in the way, and whoever gets delegated with the task doesn't know that they need to fill the forms in, and I'm not really sure why we're asking them to. and it's a little bit, I suppose, like the Christmas bit. So for the patient transport, I would ask for that £1,000 to be reinstated, but not as a grant, just as a direct payment, same as we do with the minibus service. When it comes to Christmas provision, I do take Rachel's point, and it's that these are paying for the events, but we have seen in the past where this has fallen over, and it's not really, it's a situation that I wouldn't want to see happen again. And the switch on events are all part and parcel of the lighting up. If I was going to say anything in respect of those, I would say I wouldn't want to see any cost creep. So, it said last year it was 4,200. Well, that maybe then we should be looking to contain costs at like £4,500 or whatever it is. I don't see any reason to increase it, because the reality of it is no matter what you increase it by, they could spend it by that and more so. So I would say perhaps bring Christmas provision. Well, how much is paid to Honley and how much is paid to
1,000 each, so
1,000
2,000.
So where's the other money goes? Because how much is? Because I thought they were on like £100 a piece.
There was also the Kurt Lee.
Kurt Lee
We're
one's
going to
1,000.
well,
7,000.
Okay, so
or you create
So-
them as two separate budget votes. Christmas events.
why has it gone up to 5,500 then from 4,200 the year before? Do we know that?
I don't think it has, is it?
The actual,
I think it was overspent the year before.
no, it's underspent. The budget last year was 5.1 and we spent 4.2.
So I guess, well, for tidiness, why not take £1,000 off Christmas provision and reinstate the £1,000 for patient transport service, but make the Honley grant, the Honley Lights grant, the patient transport grant, and the Homeforth Lights grants, not grants, but actually recurring payments.
I think one of the difficulties we had with the patient transport grant was that we really didn't know what we were getting or what that service involved, because despite a lot of efforts by Jen to try and contact Honley Surgery, we didn't really have anybody coming to speak to us or corresponding with Jen to let us know what that's about, or whether does it cover Honley or is it with the two GP surgeries in Holmfirth as well, and how does it work out how many people are transported as a result of it? It'd be useful to know these things before.
So they have presented that to us in the past.
I had lots of communication with them from my side, but very little backing. When I asked them those kind of specifics for some information, what we got back was a thank you note with nothing further on it.
So what have you got in the same way for the £23,500 that goes to the minibus? We've got detailed figures on that and it gets carried.
Well, they are going to attend service provision to actually have that conversation, because it's the same concern I've had since day one when I arrived. Both of those, but the minibus one more so. What are we getting for the money? Is there any review? Is there any evidence of what difference it makes? Because we're putting in a little bit of money to a much bigger project. But the patient transport's the same as, I think they have figures report about 13 grand turnover. But it looks like it's an organisation that's run by the doctors themselves.
It is, it's a charity run.
So it's not like a normal, it's not like the Christmas Lights volunteers where you can see the volunteers, the uplanders, they're doing lovely things.
Yeah, no, it's quite
very visible and it's very obviously volunteers and volunteer led. I think the other thing is an extension of what the surgery does, but it seems like an historic anomaly that needed to be resolved either way, really.
Yeah, it'd be better if the scheme administrators reported back. They have done in the past, so in the past they've made it clear what the catchment area is, which surgeries are covered by it, which is all free. The area goes outside the home valley because the patients go outside the home valley. And they also gave volumes as well. They also gave the explanations to why it needed to be patient transport rather than just taxis because of the specific training of the driver. But yeah, I won't be averse to asking him to come in, but it is one of those questions, we're not the easiest partners to deal with. So we're criticising them for not being upfront here, or we seem to ask an awful lot of questions and then not be particularly forthcoming with the money.
It's the kind of thing, the issue we've got in staff is we'll then have our internal auditor saying, right, well, you need to show what the impact of the monies is. And in spite of 3 written requests to get the information from the surgery, just didn't get the information back. All that kind of information you said they provided in the past.
Yeah.
We just haven't had it.
And you wanted them to provide it every year?
Well, I think it must have been about
If-
4 or
if-
5
if
years ago
it's
since
a
the last
grant,
time
It
it
will
was.
have been, it will have been, yeah.
In terms of giving the monies in this way, we need the evidence, well, you need the evidence as a council of how it's been spent.
The internal auditor is very keen that we give out a grant audit report to each person we give a grant to, where they report on how they spend the money, they track what they've spent, i.e. keep a record of everything they've spent, because it's public money. That's what the auditors looking at. So, that's the struggle, is A, that we haven't traditionally done it, and B, getting them on side is not proving easy either. We have had a few back. I have been sending them out this new trial form we have, and we've had a few back, but as Jen says, you just email and nothing comes, and you're a bit stuck really. And like I said, it's public money, so.
Well, there's a way forward with this that because I basically, we discussed withdrawing the budget line, basically because it forced their hand then. If they want £1,000, they have to put a grant in, so they'd have to give us the paperwork. You could leave the budget line in, but make it clear there would be no allocation on that budget until we've actually had a conversation, we've reviewed it, and we've made a decision for next year. I don't think we'd want to continue with that arrangement that they get the money with no process, because it was they're taking it for granted basically, and they shouldn't.
Or as we've said before, at the grants group, whether we reach a point where we are going on a procurement line and we're developing a contract over the length of a parish council, i.e. for 4 years, which I think is what Councillor Breeze was talking about. And that there's certainly the potential to do that, but obviously that has its own, when we set that up, that they've got to be done properly as well, and they've got to show what they're going to give us for that commitment in 4,000, 4 years of money. So that's not a freebie either.
I think the Service Provision Committee is kind of broadly in favour of the patient transport scheme, but it's just wanting to know an update and to know what it's doing. Does it still cover the other 2 surgeries in Holmfirth as well as Honley? Lots of other things. It'd be useful just to know, wouldn't it? Just to see where things are really.
Sorry, I had to pop out there for a moment. Where have we got to? Have we agreed service provision?
Well, not quite. I mean, we've made some progress. I mean, we're looking a lot better than we were when the meeting started. Let's take that. I mean, my worry still is the 25%. We're still probably, because this current year we're probably going to be about 24,000 over budget, and I think next year, as it's timetable, we're probably going to be another 25,000 over budget. At the moment, our general reserves are about 115. So if we take in like nearly 50 down off that, that's about 60 something, 70 something. But that's not 25%. That's nearer probably 15%. That's the difficulty. I mean, as we've said, we do have earmark reserves. I mean, a lot of them are just sat there for years and nothing happening. Like we've got 10,000 in the earmark reserve to fix up this office.
All right. Well, why don't we just go through some line by line? We'll take a vote on them line by line. And these are all recommendations.
On the earmark reserves you're talking about?
No, on service provision.
Okay.
Okay. So Home First Civic Hall projects, 15,000, change that to zero.
Can I just find it on the thing so I can just work through it?
432.
Let Rich lead it and then he
No,
can
I'm
tell.
happy to, but I just need to find out where it is on the, right, so that's that. Okay, so we're happy for Honley Library to have the 15,000 in and to have 15,000 in the earmark reserve. I mean, that was quite handy really, because that basically means it costs us nothing, because essentially we had an earmark reserve of 30,000. We moved 15 into the
What's the
budget.
purpose of putting it into an earmarked reserve for the library rather than just putting it into general reserves?
It's gone into the budget.
No, it's taking it out of earmarks and putting it in the budget.
Yeah, it's taken 15 hours.
Oh, is that how it's being funded from it's being funded from earmarked reserves, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Sorry?
And then, yeah, Civic Hall, we can make that 0.
Yeah.
Is the next one,
Toilets.
is that toilets?
Yeah. 22.
So that we've got 22, which I know has gone up quite a lot, but you know, the price of energy's gone up. Water seems to be going up as well. And I think the condition of this is that next year the committee does have to review the contractors' contracts, because you know he's got a license to print money. We just pay him what he says he's done. It's just really not very clever, really. But we've been doing it for several years, obviously. So that needs a review. Once the new council's bedded in, I think we said in the autumn, did we, Jen? Is that right? Or winter of winter of 2023. Yeah. Next one, we just kept at 1,000.
I think we're fine with that, Richard. Can I leave it? And we'll just go.
Oh yeah. Okay.
If that's all right. So, Christmas provision, are we comfortable leaving it at 5,500 or will we drop it down at 4,500? I'm up for 4,500 so we can move the 1,000 to the transport, but it's kind of linked.
Why are we just moving both the Christmas grants out of those and making it 3,500?
Because I personally feel that we're effectively, I'd much rather have a commissioning arrangement with those groups. They knew they got £1,000 because what we get for that, the value they bring to the town in lighting up the place at Christmas from both villages, it's worth £1,000 contribution.
I'd say so.
Okay,
Well,
well then
just
just
wouldn't ask them to do a grant. I think they should just give us an invoice.
But we can bring that down to 4,000. We can bring that budget.
you
package
can't.
down.
You can't. That goes.
Goes on.
That will be gone by the end of the year. I think you'll have about 30 quid left in that budget.
So you're fairly confident the tree bill this year will be fine.
I think.
All right.
I think we're about 100 quid under budget at the end of the year probably.
Okay. Right, so that stays as it is, but I'm happy to support moving to a commissioning basis.
Okay, good.
We want to take a vote on it.
Yeah, let's take a vote on it. Yeah.
Then the next one is the patient transport service. So, do we want to just
Can I
leave-
just, the
don't we
dog
go through every
waste,
single one of them?
well, I'm just saying the dog waste one's gone up an awful lot. I mean,
For one person to get 400 bags.
well, exactly. I just think, you know, at some point we have to say, well, this is the number of boxes and bags we'll provide to each unit each month, or however, I don't know how regularly, but, and just that's it. If they're all taken, then that's unfortunate, but I think there should be, rather than us just continuing to supply them.
Yeah, because I think the problem is just one box, isn't it?
It's the whole
seems to
one,
be.
yeah.
Just one box.
Yeah.
It's all at home then.
Yeah.
So I think, and even if the sticker
And
has
although
that
it's
box
in
that
my
says-
street, I'm not willing to go and stand there for 24 hours a day.
No, it's fine, but I just don't think, because I think we've increased the number of dispensers over the last few years, which is great, and I don't think we should turn down the opportunity to create more if people come to us and say they want one, but I don't think we should just keep spending hundreds and hundreds of extra pounds. If there is an issue with them getting pinched from somewhere, then that box will just end up being empty.
I suppose
And then it'll be filled at the beginning of the month, and then it'll be empty.
I suppose we need to work out how how we give out by proportion though, don't we? Because only just ring up and ask for like a big box, don't they, Jen? And obviously that's where a lot of the problem comes from.
But maybe.
You've also got the problem, these people are volunteers that are trying to do a worthy thing, and we want to try and help them do it. And I can see from the Facebook post, because it was them who posted on Facebook saying how frustrated they were, the people are robbing the bags as well. So, but I think if the cost of the bags have gone up anyway, I'd still support an increase in the budget, but we need to work with the volunteers to put in a
Well, maybe a
sustainable-
slight increase, but 1,000 to one of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
another 650 quid seems a bit much. Put it up to, I don't know, 1,200.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
You wanna vote on
With
that?
yeah, 1,200.
All in favour?
Yeah.
Sorry, Charles, you're on to patient transport.
So, well, it's
Keep with
do
that.
we just leave it as it is, or do we put the 1,000 back in there? I would like to see the 1,000 back in and give them a chance to actually, you know, but rather than on this grant basis again, make it clear that it's on it'll just come. But
Well, we've got, there's the grants working party and doing its work at the moment and they have talked about the commissioning for these regular payments, so in different relationships, so people don't have to fill in the form every time.
Yeah.
Would you be able to ask them to, if they could respond? Yeah.
well, if you want to write to them again, copy me into it if you would do, and I'll take it up with them. No problem with that.
Right, and I'll forward to you all the emails I've sent them.
Oh.
So you can see.
Yeah.
But perhaps this is the way to see the difference between F&M and service provision, is that service provision deals with procurement of the patient transport, of the Christmas
Of
stuff,
services. Yeah.
of the minibus service, and finance deals with the grants.
Okay, so are we sticking with 1,000 in patient transport scheme then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the expectation minibus costs will go up by
No,
£2,000?
no, it's coming down. No, I don't know why we put it up in the first place, because it's a contract, so it's just a set figure. They work it out. I can't remember how much it is now, but it's something like £68 a day, and you could work it out mathematically. The cost for the entire year, it's about 23,000 and a few hundred. So I just like it's just a calculation.
Won't be 23,138, would it? Yeah. I'm happy to leave that where it is if everybody else is. Yeah. So again, phone boxes seems to be up and down, but happy to leave it at 400.
Yeah.
Seats
and shelters maintenance, is this going to be the same issue as there is with the toilets?
No, there's not actually. No, that strangely is under budget at the moment.
I know, I mean about being absolutely aware of what was being paid for.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It needs review.
Although it is under budget, so it's not so problematic.
So that's 13,000 then, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
War Memorial stay at 0. Just at that. And then we said youth grants. So this is 4755. Will become.
Well, I've removed that.
Yeah.
I've got rid of that.
And then 4760 is to be renamed.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Right, brilliant. Okay. We're there.
And we're sticking with the figure of the renamed youth facilities of 25,000, yeah?
Yeah.
We're calling it youth facilities, are we?
No, we're calling it Home Valley.
Oh, like that. Okay,
Youth
yeah.
work in the home.
Youth work in the Home
I
Valley.
think I've done that. I'll have to have a look.
As long as it's got youth work in there, that's it. Good man.
Youth work in the Home Valley, 25,000. Okay, so in terms of the figures, so in this current year, and these figures are, there's kind of obvious guesswork in that I'm assuming that lots of committees will spend their money, and that's not necessarily going to be the case. So this current year would probably be about 24,000 over budget. And as it's set up for next year now, again, it's about 25,000 over budget. So it'll be about 49.50 in the red. So we'll be under what we need in terms of the 25%.
Shall we carry on with the individual committees and then deal with them?
Yeah.
So the next one is admin.
I mean, admin's in a slightly weird position because it has on paper gone up quite a lot. It's gone up by about 29,000, but a lot of the reason for that is down to elections. And then we obviously had the situation with the insurance where that leapt by £4,000 and wasn't an awful lot we can do about that. It's just the way things are, unfortunately.
What's the total in the elections reserve? Is that 19?
Well, nothing now. I've moved, basically next year, the 19,789, that's in the reserve.
Right.
And so that's basically moved into the, so it's actually cost us, well, it will only cost us 5 really, because obviously I put 5 in this year's budget to go into that pot anyway. I could move it into the earmark reserve this year, or we could just not spend it and it drop in at the end, but that's why that budget line is, looks over, but it's sort of about 40, it's 9 up basically if you discount the earmark reserve use. I don't think it's particularly controversial, this.
No. Okay, do we approve that?
Yeah.
Yes, all in favour? Yeah. F&M.
I mean, as it stands, I've just kept it rolling as it is currently. So,
Yes,
It
I mean, it's
seems-
essentially exactly the same as last year, really, isn't it?
it's, as we've said, it has proved more difficult getting people to apply for grants for the projects and events budget line. So we'll see how that does in the next. Because even when I'm hassling people to apply, it doesn't happen as much as you'd think.
Well, there'll be coronation events. I know they will, in theory, go to the budget, but there might be an overspill. I mean,
there might be an overspill. There was an overspill this year, wasn't
yeah,
there? So,
we had an overspill on Platinum. Not much, but we did have
yeah,
some.
that's true. And then the other thing is Home for Tech, which at the moment, obviously this year we didn't have anything in the budget this year for them, but they did spend £10,000 from the earmark reserve. I don't know. I put down that we didn't put anything in, but as things stand, we've got nothing in the earmark reserve and nothing in the budget for them.
For the tech.
So it's whether they apply through the other community assets budget, or you build something in for it. I mean, it's quite difficult knowing what to take with the tech, because obviously we're getting lots of information from them, which I don't know, like the boiler, the boilers need replacing now.
Well, there's a big question mark, isn't there, about what happens with the land charity money, and perhaps some of these bigger asset projects might be where that could be directed to. I think for me, the money in there for other community assets. You were talking about bringing the total budget asks down. Was that so that we don't end up having the precept rise? Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, I think so. We can move on to. We can vote on
in terms of
whether we want to raise the precept.
Well, if 53 grand means for other community assets, 20,000 for grants means that there's going to be a need to increase the precept, I'm fine with that. If we need to still trim a few £1,000s from various places, I think there's room to trim some from community assets. as long as we're going to have this conversation about what Land Charity does.
Yeah, well,
That's not a conversation.
No, exactly. Well, it is one of those of, it'd be useful to know how close are we to get to
I think it might be illegal for us to talk about that in this meeting with a recorder on.
I think, Chair, in terms of that, though, we know that both the tech and the civic could easily spend all of that money. But by having one budget line, so rather than ring fencing it for the tech, I think it's much fairer just to have a standard community assets budget.
Yeah.
And then they just need to pitch, don't they, and come with their stories and their budgets and their business plans. And if we've only got 53,000, if it was really exceptional, then we can make requests to go into the reserve, the general reserve. But I think whether it's 53 or 50 or 48, in some ways, it's never going to be enough anyway. That's
It
No,
will
no.
never be enough. Yeah,
No, that's it.
they're both bottomless pits.
So if we agree F&M as it's proposed, where does that leave us in terms of projected budget compared to?
Hang on, we've still got. Where have we gone?
I think that was it.
What's this last one? F&M we've done. What's this and this?
That's the full count.
That's
All
Richard's
right,
extra.
so we're moving on to full. Sorry, Charles, I was misunderstanding Liberty Paper.
It's just that there's only Richard now with an accurate copy, that's all.
Trying to find out. Let me find where we are with the general reserves for this year.
While you're looking at that, I'm just going to ask somebody who would wish. I'm trying to find the word. Who would wish to increase the precept other than in dire emergency? You would.
I do think.
Hang on.
Can I just speak to it? And I'm sure I'll lose this vote. I think if you look at the bandy, there's a really odd figure at the moment that we charge. I just think we should round it up to 30 quid. It's a 10% increase. People aren't going to notice pennies a week, and it would give us a bit of headroom in the budget. And I think it's clear that the parish can evidence what it's doing with that money, that we're creating a £25,000 pot to actually purchase youth work that's no longer delivered by the council. But I think there's a logic for an inflationary rise. Kirklees Council, following the announcement from the Treasurer Hunt, they're all going to be forced basically to raise anyway. So I don't think we would be doing anything that's out of line with what Kirklees Council are going to go on council tax. 10% on 27 quid is like 3 quid. It rounds it up to £30 on the bandy, and that's what I would propose we do. But I know there'll be a kickback against that, but that's what I personally feel.
Can I ask when the last time the precept was increased? About 3 or 4 years ago.
Went up 5 quid
About 5 years ago.
before my time. But
It was
not-
before
not-
I was a
not long
councillor.
before-
I remember
not
it being
before my-
Was it when were you a
I
councillor?
think it was to do with the civic hall, wasn't it? Yeah.
Can I give you some figures? So our bandy is £27.18. The average bandy is £77.21.
For a
So that's-
parish council?
Yeah.
Right.
That's England and Wales, isn't it?
Sorry, Charles?
That'd be England and Wales, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then you've got some councils like Kingsbrook Council put up their bandy tax rate by 468% last year. It went up to £237.62. So
What about?
and it's all over the shop.
Yeah, but there's perhaps more
But different
appropriate
services.
comparisons.
No, but ours is very low, is the point.
Right, so we've established that we're low as a parish council goes.
Can I
But
just ask?
Councillor East,
Can I just ask this? Do you know what maybe Melton precept is, or Kirkburton, or Penistone?
Kirkburton is about tuppence, but then they don't do anything.
It'll be around some times around. When we did some analysis on this, we were low compared to our peer organisation.
Yeah.
Very
But
low.
I think that was before we pushed it up. We had quite a big step up, but I would have said we're probably still towards that lower end for.
I mean, I think the last time I looked at Neltham, it was around about 45 to 50 quid a
So
year.
it was double that and getting on for double that.
Yeah, yeah.
And Kirkburn?
It's all depending on what services and things.
Yeah.
It's apples and pears, isn't it? Because some of these are really tiny hamlets, really. So it's not surprising they charge a bit more money because there's no to character.
Yeah.
We're really big, aren't we, in parish terms?
Melton, right, here we go. So, Demigales are less than us, Kirkburn is significantly less than us, Meltham is significantly more than us, Murfield is significantly less than us. I don't know whether that gives you anything. Murfield is only £8 and Kirkburn is only £15, Meltham's nearer £50.
Oh, what are you looking at for that? What date are you looking at for it?
2022 to 23.
What have you got for Murfield?
£8.
£8.51 it says here.